Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A. Today we're going to go over section 6.5, the for each loop. The for each loop sometimes is called the enhanced for loop, but we are going to be calling it the for each loop because it's going to go through each of the items within an array. Now let's go and let's go over your repo. Make sure you have it open, type in your name, period. And the for each loop is used to be able to go through the elements of an array or an array list that we're going to cover in the next unit. But for now, let's go and create an array of integers. So int an array, let's go and call it nums. And let's go and initialize it to 5 different values, so 23, 15, 17, 0, and 14. And we know that in order to be able to print it, we need to be able to do a for loop for int I equal to 0, while I is less than nums.length, and no parentheses because this is a variable, I++. And we know that we need to be able to print each of the elements. We can access each of the elements by calling the nums and then bracket the index I, and let's go and place a parenthesis space in between. Let me make myself a little smaller. There we go. So therefore, if we run it, we should be able to print all 5 elements into the screen, and it does. So the for each loop is going to do exactly the same thing, but instead it's going to allow us to be able to simplify the code. And the way that it works is that you're going to have to initialize your variable and give it a new name. So in this case, we have integers in all the elements into arrays. So we are going to say int. You have to give it a new name. So let's go and say n for the numbers. And now column, and now the name of the array, which is nums. So now, instead of having to access each of the elements into the array, what we can do, we can just say n instead of nums bracket I, and if we run it, it should give us exactly the same output, and it does. So what is happening is that once you initialize the n, each of the times that it goes through the loop is going to say n is equal to 23, and then it prints the value of n. Then next time it goes through the loop, it's going to say n is equal to 15 because n is an integer, as we have it here. So n is an integer, and it's going to go n equal to 15. Then it's going to print the value of 15. And then once it goes through the loop, it's going to say n equal to 17, then n equal to 0, n equal to 14, and then it prints each of the values. So therefore, it's going to be assigning each of the elements into the variable int, and then it's going to be able to use it. So I know what you think is, well, is there a big difference? So let's go and talk about the differences as we go into strings. Now let's go and create an array of strings right below the string bracket bracket. Let's go back to the dwarfs, and let's go and initialize it to all 7 dwarfs, so we know it's dopey, happy, bashful, dark. We have grumpy, and which one am I missing? Happy, sleepy, sneezy. It's usually the one that you forget. So now, let's go and change this for loop. Now the elements in our array of strings are strings, so each is going to be a string. We can call it n, and now we're going to say dwarfs, and every time it goes through, it's going to initialize, it's going to assign a different value to the string n, and the first time it's going to be dopey, and then it prints it. The next time it will be happy, sleepy, and then it prints each one of them. But why is it useful? So let me go and do ln so we can actually see them all in the same screen. And let me go and delete that. So now it prints all 6. So why is it useful? It's useful because now instead of having, if we need to be able to print the length of each one, instead of having to do dwarfs and then access each of the elements as we used to do before and then that length, now we can just do the variable name, which in this case is n, is the value that we assign it, and now we can run it and you'll print all 4. And then in this case length, it has to be in a method because now is the length of each of the strings. So let's go and run it. Now it's going to print each of the length. So it makes the code a little easier to use, especially as we go into objects. If I want to be able to place it to uppercase, that's I can say n2 uppercase. And now I can run it, and now each of the strings in the array is going to be printed in uppercase. So this will simplify your code. You'll be able to use it as you go into the arrays and arrays list. So now let's go and create a array of hamburgers. So we have our hamburger class up there. We're going to do a hamburger, then bracket bracket. The name of the array will be hams equals, and we're going to have our first hamburger. We're going to just construct them here. So new hamburger. Then we're going to create a single hamburger. We're going to call our default constructor. And let's look at our other constructor. Other constructor, patties, cheese, and tomato. Yes or no? So let's go and call our second constructor. And we have to make sure that we have commas in between. New hamburger, and it's going to be a double with no tomato. So therefore, we create our hamburger array called hams, construct our first hamburger and have into the array, second hamburger, double with no tomato. So therefore, to be able to modify or for each loop, we're going to change this to the type, what is being held in the array, hamburgers. We're going to call it n, and what is the name of the array will be hams. So therefore, if we just print n, which is the hamburger, each of the time this is going to be assigned to the first hamburger. Then the second time is going to be assigned to the second hamburger, the value of n. So we can just actually just print n ham error. Cannot find symbol for hams. So this is a class, so it has to be an uppercase hamburger, correct? Otherwise it doesn't able to say what is a hamburger, lowercase. So now it prints both of the hamburgers. So that's what for each loops are designed to do. Now there are some restrictions that we need to be aware of. Whenever you're dealing with a for each loop, you must go through each of the elements in the array. You cannot break out of it. So if you start, you must start to the very end. Second, you cannot modify primitive types. So therefore, so let me go back to my nums. So they're int n, and they're going to be nums. If I modify here and I say n plus plus and increase by 1, notice that when I print it, each of the numbers get increased by 1. But if I go back and print it out once again after I increase by 1, and I want to be able to see the contents of the array, notice that let me just print an extra system that I'll print it in. So notice that the first in here, it did update the value of each of the elements, but once we go back and print the array, that did not state. Because what's happening is that in here, you are placing the value 23, increase it by 1, but once you go into the next element, that element does not get updated. Same thing happens with strings. So if I do place as a string and I place it to uppercase, so I can say n equal n to uppercase. Then if I run it, it's going to print them out to uppercase. And what's the name of the array? Where we got? It's not nums anymore, it's called wars. Now if I run it, and let's go and change this again to string wars. If I run it and I print them again, they get printed to uppercase, but the elements do not change within the array. Now, in the case of an object, if you have a hamburger, and now it's going to be hams, and let's go and change the over here as well. And they're going to be hamburger. The name of the hamburger, because it's only the class. If I go and change and say now I want to say n dot, let's go into the hamburger class, and let's go and set patty to 5. So I'm going to change each of the patties, each of the hamburgers. Now it's going to say set patty, and I want to change it to 5. Whenever I print each of the hamburgers, they will have 5 patties now. So now they have 5, and notice that they did get updated. So it works the same way that we work with methods. Whenever you pass a primitive into a method, if the value gets changed there, unless you return it, then the value does not get changed into the main method. But with objects, whenever you change something to an object, because you pass in the reference to where the object is located, whenever it gets changed back, that's still pointing to the same object, so therefore that gets updated. So those are some of the restrictions with for each loop. For each loop, you must go through the entire array. You cannot break out of it. You cannot go in reverse either. You have to go forward. So first, you must go through the entire array. Second, you cannot go backwards. And third, your primitive types do not get updated. You cannot modify anything array if in the for each loop. But whenever you're dealing with objects, if you modify anything within the object, it does get translated into your main array. So this is the lesson for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.